So, this was a mistake. Good evening, everybody. My name is John Hub, and I talk about video games on the internet. And this time I'll be completing games on the internet. Welcome to Year of Like a Dragon, a challenge in which I'll be attempting to complete these games, all in under a year. I found that so far, my time has been spent playing Yakuza all day, and when I'm not playing, I'm editing the video that you're watching right now. Yakuza 0 is a prequel that takes place 17 years prior to the first game. Despite being called 0, it actually came out after Yakuza 5. It takes place first in the series chronology, and it's the game in the series that I'd know the best, so it was a no-brainer that it would be the first game I'd be completing in this challenge. This video will not be a review, although this game is amazing, nor will it be a story analysis. Rather, I'll be taking you through my journey, explaining what's required to complete the game, and documenting my progress and overall mindset along the way. If you enjoy and want to see this challenge as it unfolds, feel free to like and subscribe if you'd like. The goal is to get a video out at the end of every single month, but of course some games will take longer than others, so I can't keep any promises there. But anyway, with all that being said, let's dive right into the Year of Like a Dragon. I've been planning this challenge for quite a while now. It was very important to me that I start right on January 1st of this year, with fresh saves and no progress in any of these games. But I did of course do some research. The first question you may be asking is, what does it really take to 100% Yakuza 0? A lot of guides and videos I've watched actually only talk about platinuming the game, that is, getting all the achievements. There are, however, a couple of in-game metrics that track progress and completion as well. Meet the completion list. It's full of challenges and milestones that, in addition to the game's main story, make up the 100% run of the game. It ranges from things that you'll probably come across naturally, like walking 5 kilometers, to stuff like bowling 10 strikes in the bowling minigame, which would require you to go out of your way to do that. There is an achievement in Yakuza 0 for completing the completion list, but that actually isn't the case for platinuming some other Yakuza games. However, seeing as I'm trying to complete these games, I will not only be platinuming every game, but also completing each game's completion list. So anyway, the new year came and I went straight to work. I began the game on hard difficulty, as I had to unlock and beat legend difficulty later on for an achievement. I breezed through the first 4 chapters of the story on my very first day. This series is known for its minigames, and as such, a lot of completion metrics revolve around them. So along the way, I did all the disco minigame challenges and all of Kiryu's karaoke songs, as well as the high score challenges for the arcade games Space Harrier and Outrun. I was about halfway through my day when I thought to myself, this challenge might not be so bad. The game breaks down everything I need to do in the categories of story, combat, business, subquests, and minigame challenges. But it would really suck if I had to learn a decently complex minigame that has nothing to do with the story of 2 young Yakuza being dragged into serious life or death situations. It would be a tragedy if said minigame had 6 distinct challenges that could only be achieved with an above rudimentary understanding of the game and a good amount of luck that I could spend hours attempting and still not complete. This video is about Riichi Mahjong. Before I even began this challenge, I knew that the threat of Mahjong was looming the entire time. And I mean, look at how menacing it looks. This game has 6 distinct challenges tied specifically to Mahjong. They are, go out 10 times, go out with Mongon 5 times, go out with Hanuman 1 time, go out with Riichi Ipatsu, go out with full straight, and earn a total of 10 million yen in Mahjong. And I know what you're thinking, because I was thinking it too. Why is his pronunciation so bad? But also, what does that mean? Well, in a nutshell, Mahjong is a game with tiles where the goal is to get a winning hand through discarding tiles and taking new ones, and from stealing tiles from other players. A winning hand consists of 1 pair of 2 identical tiles and 4 melds, which are either 3 tiles of the same suit in ascending order, such as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 3 identical tiles. If you've played Rummy or Rummikub, you're probably familiar with melds or sets as they're sometimes called. The first player to get 4 melds in 1 pair wins the hand, and the game ends within a certain number of hands being played. The challenge go out 10 times simply means to get 10 winning hands. While a typical hand has to do with getting 4 melds in 1 pair, there are some winning hands worth more points than others. Things like having all your melds be of the same suit, or even having 7 pairs, which is a special hand, are all valuable hands. The scoring metric that Mahjong uses is called Han in this game, and winning with 5 Han is generally considered going out with Mongon. Similarly, going out with Hanuman means just getting a winning hand with 7 Han. The best general strategy that I've seen for Mahjong is looking to see if you're 1 tile away from a winning hand, and then tapping the shit out of a square to see if you can declare Riichi. Richi basically means you're telling the game that you're one tile away, and the game will play on autopilot until you draw the last tile that you need for yourself, or until someone else draws that tile, at which point you can steal it and win. If you declare Richi and then win within 3 draws, you'll complete the challenge for Richi Ipatsu. The last challenge is earning 10 million yen, which you'll likely already have trying to do all the other challenges on the high stakes table. The Mahjong challenges in Yakuza 0 took way longer than they should have to complete, and I found myself going back to grind out a little more each day, finally finishing the challenges on the 3rd day of my playthrough, rather than shotgunning it all on day 1. Good thing I'll never have to play Mahjong again. If Mahjong was any indication, minigames are the cornerstone to completing any Yakuza game, and Yakuza 0 minigames all have at least one challenge associated with them on the completion list. Before really focusing on anything story related, I did the Mahjong challenges, 90% or higher on every karaoke song, high scores on the arcade games. From easiest to hardest games to high score, it was definitely Space Harrier, Super Hang-On, Outrun, followed by Fantasy Zone at the hardest. Also in the arcade is the UFO Catcher, an evil claw machine that could have been worse, but it was still time consuming nonetheless. There's really no more strategy to this one than lining up the claw and hoping you get what you want. I struggled a bit on the batting cage minigame until I found this guide that outlined the timings of the pitches to the nearest tenth of a second. Then I used my hyper-advanced wombo combo frame data centric brain to hit some freaking taters out the park. Speaking of taters, I did booby wrestling as well. This one has you betting exorbitant amounts of money on one of 8 fighters and playing rigged rock paper scissors, praying that the odds are in your favor. They rarely are, and I can confidently say that I hate boobs after this one. But speaking of boobs, I played the Telephone Club minigame right after this. This one is repetitive yet simple, and you have to play it a minimum of 7 times to get all the possible outcomes. Every minigame is a baseline 7 out of 10 though, just from how dramatic Kiryu is while doing the most mundane things. I did bowling as well, which proved to be pretty difficult as you have to bowl 3 strikes in a row, and my uncoordinated ass has never bowled above 120 in real life. I did pool, where the challenges require you to perform 3 carom shots and 3 combination shots. Feats that I'm convinced would be impossible if you couldn't play solo and give yourself 20 turns to line up the balls in the perfect formation so that you can make a trick shot where you gotta hit the one ball with the cue ball and then it has to roll backwards in the perfect way to knock another ball into another hole. That's basically what a carom shot is. It was bullshit. And then I also did shogi. I'm sure there will be a time in a later game in the series where I can't cheese the same challenge for shogi over and over and end the game in like 4 turns, but that time was not this game. Oh, you thought just because it's a new section in the video that means we're done with minigames. Nope, we haven't even had time to talk about the casino and other gambling games. Blackjack, poker, baccarat, roulette, not to mention the gambling games in West Park. While 3 of the West Park gambling games boiled down to being spicy blackjack and waiting for dice to make a good number, I was able to bypass what might have been the only game with any complexity, Koi Koi, in 2 games without knowing the rules and just pressing random buttons. After beating those, the only gambling game left was darts. I immediately got my ass beat before realizing you can buy better darts, and that's when I started getting dubs. Okay, now this surely has to be all the minigames in the game. I mean, I went for them first because I thought it would be a quick detour so I could do the story and subquest, which I assumed would take longer. But I was wrong. By complete chance, I somehow saved some of my favorite and least favorite minigames for absolute last. Fishing would be damn near impossible without a guide. Like, I won't hide the fact that I'll be consulting guides and walkthroughs for anything that proves to be too much of a challenge or has any form of RNG, but God bless anybody who has caught every fish in Yakuza 0 without a guide. There are 18 saltwater fish and 15 freshwater fish. The general idea is that there are differently shaped shadows in the water. You cast your line in front of them and pray that it's a unique type of fish that you haven't caught yet. The challenge comes in when you see that there's 4 different fish that could result from one shape, and different rarities that make it impossible to find certain fish without bait. This one took me a good 3.5 hours even with a guide. Fishing in video games is usually relaxing, but I've never felt more violent than when I've made my 80th attempt to catch a ghost koi and it still won't show up. But I found it though, so don't worry guys, I don't have to be violent anymore now. Yippee! Like Mahjong, I can make a whole video on just Pocket Circuit. This minigame features 7 competitive cups, 20 completion challenges, and 8 subquests tied to Pocket Circuit alone. This one has Kiryu Racing model cars. The cars race on their own, so the gameplay itself is pretty simplistic, but the fun of the game is assembling your car with just the right parts so you don't veer off the track. At first it feels like a lot of trial and error, and frankly it is, but later on you get a feel for what the different parts are capable of doing. Like many other minigames, Kiryu is way too dramatic and focused when he's participating in pocket circuit races. He's also simultaneously twice the age of anyone else competing. This one was a challenge, but a fun one at that. And with that, that's every minigame in Yakuza 0. Kind of. With all of these minigames under my belt, I got right back to the story. And the story battles in this game were quite trivial, to be honest. Maybe it was because I've beaten the game before, but so long as I was stocked up on healing items, I really had no trouble. To talk briefly about some of the battles and my strategy, Kiryu's boss battles were probably the most challenging. The first Kuze fight could definitely serve as a barrier to entry for new Yakuza fans, and it definitely had me using a healing item or two due to my lack of upgrades. Past that though, Kiryu's final boss was the only other bit of trouble that I had. Majima on the other hand is busted. When a battle starts, I just switch into breaker style and immediately implement the tactic of spin to win. This move alone does massive damage and is even able to hit enemies and bosses on the ground. Enemies almost never have moves that can hit low, so you're pretty much unhittable while you're spinning as well. It puts enemies in a knockdown state too, so once you're done spinning, you can just spin again. If you ever feel like shaking things up too, you can switch to the slugger style and use a heat action when you're standing right in front of somebody. He has just so much shit that he can pile on in his different styles that enemies can't really keep up. Truthfully, the most challenging part of the story was making sure I didn't miss any of the story-related achievements. There's an achievement for doing a legend playthrough as well, so I could pick up anything I missed then, but I made sure to get everything in my first playthrough anyway. I'll provide a link in the description for the game's missable achievements for anyone curious, but since I read ahead, I had no problem getting these. All that being said, I finished the story in no time at all, and just when I thought the combat was easy peasy lemon squeezy, I had a challenge ahead of me. Climax battles are an assortment of some of Yakuza 0's toughest combat encounters, all in one place. Beating all of them rewards an achievement, so I got to grinding right away. There's not enough time to go through all of them, so I made a list of the top 5 hardest ones. Number 5, Millionaire Battle 2. In this one, you play as Majima and fight Mr. Shakedown in a narrow alleyway. I'm one of the most impatient gamers I know, so having to take my space and get a couple of hits off at a time proved to be kind of difficult. Number 4 is Proving Grounds 10. This one also has you playing as Majima. The objective is to defeat 4 waves of enemies while taking no damage, and while using Majima's Mad Dog style. This style sucks. The attacks come out too slow, it doesn't do much damage, and it felt like they went out of their way to choose the most incompatible enemies to fight with this style. Number 3, Melee Battle 4. Defeat 3 waves of enemies in 90 seconds using the Slugger style. The Slugger style is strong, but I felt like I didn't have nearly enough time to beat this one. I kept coming just short, but eventually I was able to beat it. Number 2 is Ultimate Battle 2. The last 6 climax battles are called Ultimate Battles. They're essentially boss rushes. Oftentimes you'll be fighting Kiryu's bosses as Majima and vice versa. Ultimate Battle 2, however, has you fighting powered up versions of 3 of Majima's bosses as Majima. The first 2 bosses aren't anything crazy until you have to fight Sarah. This is the one battle I could find where the spin to win tactic was unreliable. That alone makes this a tough challenge. Number 1, Proving Grounds 8. In what I'd call the hardest climax battle, you play as Majima and you're under the effects of a poison that simultaneously drains your health, narrows your vision, and causes you to change styles every couple seconds. There are 4 waves of enemies, and getting hit even a couple times or taking too long means you'll fail the trial. There's a good amount of luck involved in this one, as in a perfect world you'd want to be in breaker stance and just spin to win the whole time. In the event that you roll another style, however, you'll want to get heat actions off to essentially stop the clock and re-roll a new style. Funnily enough, all the challenges that I would consider difficult were ones where you had to play as Majima. Kiryu's trials were all pretty easy, especially the ones where you have access to his most busted stance, Beast style. I was able to spam this combo for all of his fights, or grab nearby furniture to do insane damage. Most, if not all, of the other climax battles weren't too much to write home about, and completing all of them took me just over 2 hours. Remember how I said I was kind of done with every minigame in Yakuza 0? I personally consider Kiryu's Real Estate and Majima's Cabaret Club to be minigames. Well, maybe a little larger than minigames. Little games, I'll call them. Could I get a hashtag little games in the comments, please? Thank you. Real Estate and Cabaret Club serve as each respective character's largest scale minigames, little games, as well as their main side story. Real Estate has you acquiring properties, investing in them, and collecting funds from said properties. Kiryu is in competition with a group called the 5 Billionaires, and upon beating each one, they'll join your real estate team as advisors. At the end of the real estate storyline, Kiryu gains access to a 4th fighting style, Legend style. This, to me, is like an early version of his now iconic Dragon style in later games. It's okay, but the Beast and Brawler styles are undoubtedly better. Similarly, the Cabaret Club has Majima competing with 5 rival cabaret clubs to be the most successful. You challenge their owners one by one and gain access to their top employees upon beating them. And you'll never guess what you get from beating this storyline. This style is so damn bad and disappointing that I'll shit on it again in this video. There is no reason to use this style over any other style in the game, Kiryu's included. It doesn't excel at anything. Thug style is great at one-on-one altercations, but overall is well-rounded. Slugger is great for defense and getting an unexpected heat action off of an unsuspecting enemy. And Breaker was probably only intended to be an AoE fighting style, but it ended up excelling at everything. I can't sing Breaker's praises enough. Through having the longest progression, Real Estate and Cabaret Club took the longest out of any other minigames to beat. Real Estate took especially long, as collecting funds consists of waiting for 5 to 10 minutes at a clip, and feeling like you don't have time to do anything else. But I had plenty of sub-stories to do to help me pass the time. Anytime I try to convince friends to try this series, I'll oftentimes show them scenes or moments from Yakuza's sub-stories. They're wacky, they're silly, and from seeing them alone, you might not think that the main story has scenes that have literally made me cry. Sub-stories take serious, tough, brooding characters like Kiryu or Majima, and put them in the most ridiculous situations possible, while also somehow tying most of them together with a touching moment that gives the player more information about the type of character that you're playing as. There's 100 sub-stories in this game, and while some are tied to minigames or to establishing friendships with citizens around the game's setting, here are my top 5 favorite sub-stories in Yakuza 0. Number 5, Sub-Story 1. Kiryu visits a fortune teller and has the events of the next couple games predicted to him. It's a meta joke that lands really well, and as a longtime fan who's played through most of the series, I really appreciated the subquest. Sub-Story 52. This one is simple and kinda dumb. As Kiryu, you can grow your friendship meter with the bowling receptionist until her final challenge is given, a special event where you need to bowl a turkey to win a literal turkey. You bowl 3 strikes in a row and she gives you a chicken named Nugget, and for whatever reason he joins as an advisor to Kiryu's real estate business. This one is technically multiple sub-stories, as you can do this a couple of times. In their respective offices, Kiryu and Majima have the ability to write postcards to a radio station. You choose from a list of subquests that you've completed, and if you choose right, the story of that subquest makes it onto the radio show. I don't know why I like this one so much. I guess it just makes all the sub-stories feel interconnected. Sub-stories 94 and 100 are Kiryu and Majima's Amon fights. The Amon clan are the secret bosses of basically every game in the series, and are some of the hardest fights in the game. Me personally, I just brought a fucking gun. And at number 1 are the Miracle Johnson sub-stories. That's right, international superstar Miracle Johnson is in town. In his first sub-story, you defend him from zombies as he moonwalks down the street. In the other, you meet him at the disco club and dance battle against him. I'm pretty sure it's impossible to win this dance battle, but he joins Kiryu's real estate business as the advisor and has the best stats by far. You also gain access to the Encounter Finder, which is one of the most useful items in the game. You can also use the Encounter Finder as a quick way to gain, wait for it. At a certain point in my run, I knew I'd need more money than I knew what to do with. Kiryu and Majima's respective skill trees cost billions to max out, and that's far from the only thing that you'll need money in the game for. I devised a 6-step plan to make some bread. Step 1. Crack open the piggy bank. There's an NPC named Mr. Moneybags that allows Kiryu and Majima to send money to one another. I sent Kiryu all of my money and made sure that I had the completion point reward that allows Kiryu to collect more money from Mr. Shakedown. Step 2. Now that we have the Encounter Finder, this will be to find Mr. Shakedown, who's an enemy that roams around the street to rob you of everything that you have. Step 3 is to stock up on zap guns. There are 2 shotguns in the game, the Slime Gun and the Zap Gun, that do extreme damage to bosses and more specifically Mr. Shakedown. I filled my inventory with these and went to go find him. Step 4 is get my ass beat. So this one sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's all part of the plan, trust me. Step number 5 is beat his ass. So by getting your money back from Mr. Shakedown, you gain an extra 50% on top of what he took from you. Using this method, I was able to farm close to 300 billion. With all this money, I maxed out all my skill trees and got to grinding something that I truthfully wouldn't wish on anyone here. I thought the last chapter of the story had the final boss, but it turns out it was right in town all along. The Dragon and Tiger is a store sent from the depths of hell. So far to complete the game, I was focused on two things: the achievements on Steam for the game, as well as the game's completion list, found in the pause menu. But if you go to the completion list, there's a menu you can access called completion items. This includes things like collectibles, a tally of restaurants and foods that you've ordered at the restaurants, and the thing that made me the closest to quitting: every single piece of equipment and weaponry in the game. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, you probably just buy all that in a couple different stores. Maybe there's a thing or two from a sub-story. Well, 95% of the equipment and weapons in the game are found in the Dragon and Tiger equipment search. As Majima, you go to the store, talk to the agent, and conduct an equipment search. You navigate to the location that has a drop rate for the equipment that you're looking for. You select it, you exit the menu, and then you wait. You could pay extra to reduce the time. You can even reduce it to 0 seconds, but you still have to exit out of that menu. By talking to the agent again, you get the results for your equipment search. Sometimes you find the equipment that you need, other times you only find the recipe, and sometimes you just find nothing. When you have the recipe, you can then craft that item using materials that you farm. Guess how you get the materials for the recipe? Conduct a search at the place that has the ingredients that you need, and then farm them little by little. There's extremely rare items as well that require you to get a crazy, unbelievable success result. I threw an extra 1 billion on top of every single search that I did, and I was broke by the end. I don't really know how long this took, but it was by far the worst and most mind-numbing part of the entire run. I pray that this doesn't return in any capacity in future games. This whole time I've just been showing live footage of me farming stuff. I'm not playing up anything, this is literally just what you do for hours on end. But guys, I got through it eventually. And that's a lesson for you all. In life, we all have Dragon and Tiger equipment search type situations that we have to go through, but we can get through them. Anyway, with my run almost done, I decided to tie up any other loose ends. When organizing the script for this video, I made sure that I documented everything I did in as straightforward a way as possible. I also cut out talking about any sort of minutia or extremely long grind that wasn't very fun to do, to watch, or to talk about. This might give you, the viewer, the idea that everything was pretty much smooth sailing. Like sure, some things took a little while, but I was able to get everything done one by one, and there were no real roadblocks or needs to come back for anything. That is not the case at all, actually. For example, I actually tried to complete the business minigames as soon as I unlocked them, but I needed to make it far enough in the story to unlock later parts of them, which caused me to beeline the story about halfway through my run. I did sub-stories last, and certain ones don't activate with Kiryu unless you beat a Majima sub-story or two, and vice versa. The game has vending machines called dream machines that required me to walk around the city and hope that I find the right item in each one. Eventually I figured out that you could reload the same spot as Kiryu to farm 2 machines, and walk in and out of the Cabaret Club as Majima to farm a single one for any remaining items that I may need. Many of the parts for Pocket Circuit were gated behind these dream machines, and they were very annoying just to have to spam. There were times early on where I would take such a massive loss and make no progress from Mahjong and other gambling games that I'd have to reload after an hour of grinding to recoup any of my financial losses. This is what led me to grinding for money in the first place. The final rank up requirement for the Coliseum in the game required me to play the same 3 tournament 28 times in a row, and that's just for 1 rank up. There's an achievement for beating the booby wrestling 3-round tournament 10 times. I don't even like boobs anymore now, man. One of the completion metrics for the completion items list is performing every heat action, and there's a lesser known bug that makes it so Majimas don't track properly. I performed a heat action in the breaker style, and for some reason it counted as a completely different one for the slugger style. 2 types of collectibles in the game, telephone cards and videos, were just plain annoying to collect and complete. Each playable character has 45 telephone cards each, divided into A, B, and C classifications. The B cards don't show up until you find the corresponding A card, and the C doesn't show up until you find the B. These things are hardly noticeable as they appear as glowing dots on the floor in the most random places imaginable. After you find all of them, you need to give them to an NPC to build friendship by talking to them 5 to 6 different times, and the NPC has a couple of different spawn locations. Videos, on the other hand, are obtained from subquests, the Cabaret Club, and a couple of minigames. They're pretty easy to obtain, but I'm not proud to say that completing them consists of watching them and beating your meat 30 times in a row. Even more mind-numbing, there's individual achievements for ordering every single thing at every restaurant in the game, of which there are many restaurants and food items. Alcoholic drinks can only be ordered one at a time, and they make you more drunk, causing you to have to use an item to get less drunk or wait like 10 minutes to get not drunk. So there's really no way to complete this efficiently without literally talking to the same guy 12 times and ordering the next thing down the list over and over. Very engaging gameplay. I was having the oddest save bug too, where I'd press the save button and then it wouldn't say save complete on screen. This would cause my inventory to bug out until the game was saved properly, and if I deposited any of my inventory items in the item box, or used any of the bugged items in my inventory, the game would just crash. I lost about 2 to 3 hours of progress through this bug alone. Little things like this are undoubtedly nitpicks, and wouldn't affect 95% of Yakuza 0's player base, but when they come up at least once a day throughout the course of an 86.2 hour, 100% run that takes 11 days, I start to lose my mind a little bit. But at the end of the day, I did it, right? I beat the game? In my pursuit to 100% my save file, I somehow completely forgot the last achievement that I needed, and it was for clearing the game another time on Legend difficulty. After everything I went through, I didn't know how this would go. Some games in the series allow you to play Legend difficulty on New Game Plus, but not this one, so I had to start with 0 upgrades for both of my characters. I was pretty confident though, so my plan was to rush through the story with minimal upgrades. I figured Beast and Breaker style would carry me through most of the game. For the final hours of each game, I decided I'd stream my playthrough. Everything went more smoothly than expected, to be honest. And to solidify my victory, I made sure I stocked up on slime guns, which were super effective against bosses. I made it to the finale and I only knew 2 things. 1, that I was about to 100% this game, and 2, that it was slime time. I almost beefed it on the final QuickTime event, but I didn't. And with that, I unlocked every achievement, solidifying my 100% completion of Yakuza 0. I really did not know how long it would take to 100% this game. HowLongToBeat.com put this game at 142 hours for a completionist run, and most of the reports were from people that platinumed the game, which doesn't include the completion items list that I did, or S-Rank in the Coliseum, or most of Dragon and Tiger. I honestly impressed myself that I was able to zoom through this game in just 86.2 hours, which I honestly can't believe is not a lot of time for this game. Honestly, now I'm thinking that the editing process for these videos will also take a good amount of my time in addition to the 100% runs. With all that being said, just one question remains. Would I recommend that you, the viewer watching this video, complete Yakuza 0? Maybe not Yakuza 0, but definitely play it though and beat the story. This is a great entry point for any newcomers to the series, and has a lot of fun for veterans as well. Well, if you've made it this far, I just want to thank you all so much for watching. Infinite Wealth just came out, and I'll be giving myself a small break to play the story before I tackle the whole game later on in the challenge. But for all of you watching, I will see you next time when I 100% Yakuza Kiwami. Game on, gamers!